Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by developing yourself, developing your skills, your habits, your network, and more. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron Hayslip, and today we're going to be talking with Sara Oros, who is literally graduating from her coding bootcamp today, and she's here to get some advice on next steps. So if you find yourself to be in that position, graduating a coding bootcamp, or maybe eventually you will be in that position, hopefully this episode is helpful for you. It was really great to talk with her. She's going to kind of do this reverse interview thing where she asks me a bunch of questions and I give her very long-winded answers. But anyways, I hope you enjoy. All right, Sara, thanks so much for doing this. As I just said, the kind of background here for doing episodes like this is every once in a while, I get the opportunity to have a call with somebody who's kind of troubleshooting their journey to becoming a software engineer. And I just thought it'd be helpful to try and open that up to other people to just basically, put our conversation out to the world. So that being said, You reached out at one point, I think, via LinkedIn. And I actually believe, which I'm sorry, I think I screwed up the first time we were supposed to have the call, which is my bad.
Totally fine. No,
thanks for being gracious to me. But yeah, would love to start off from the beginning and hear like what was the thing that caused you to reach out to me, and then give me a little bit about on your background as far as like where you're at with your learn to code journey and all the good stuff. And I'll ask more direct questions as you go here.
Yeah, definitely. So I believe it's funny. I first heard about like you and like the podcast, specifically thinking like a developer podcast, because somebody else in my network on LinkedIn had shared one of your, or a link to that podcast. And I was like, what is this? And I clicked on it, and long behold, this was one of the biggest things. That podcast was one of the biggest things that helped me, like before I started coding, as I went through my coding boot camp. And and I remember I started following you on LinkedIn, and one day I believe you shared that you would wanted, like somebody to come on to the podcast, and I like quickly messaged you because I thought that would be so cool. And I feel like I have like kind of like specific questions that can be kind of like, it's kind of like a gray area when it comes to like, being a junior, web dev and stuff like that. So I felt like that was like my chance.
Awesome.
So that's when I reached out to you. Yeah.
Well, hopefully I can answer them. If I can't, I'll just make something up and no one will know.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, cool. Well, tell me about your story specifically. We just talked a little bit before we started recording that you're in Southern California thinking about moving somewhere else for like the next step of your bootcamp journey. But what got you like into coding? You told me a little bit about your background as far as graduating college, doing ministry, which I have a ministry background too, which is really interesting, I think. Start from the beginning and just kind of like, let's throw a narrative down for what the journey has been for you up to this point.
Yeah, definitely. As mentioned, I was a missionary for a few years in my early 20s, and I was paid by the church. I thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life. I have a bachelor's in ministry, so I was like, yes, this is what I'm going to do, and as time went by, and after getting married, I ended up going into the optical field, super random. So I was in the optical field for a few years. And while I was in the optical field, I actually met and came across software engineers for the first time, because our office was transitioning to a whole different software, and basically they were revamping our software. And I completely thought these people were like super like genius, like these people like have these like crazy PhDs and like all this stuff. So I thought they were so cool, and I just never thought much of it at the time. I just thought like, wow, I wish I was as smart as them to do something like this, and so fast forward, once the pandemic hit, I was very much so one of those people, like many others, who decided, had that moment of like, okay, what do I want to do in life? like what's going on, and yeah, so I decided, and in my previous job, I worked like 6 days a week, 10-hour shifts, sometimes 12-hour shifts. And it was actually like an hour and a half commute, like one way. And I was just kind of like sick of it. So I made just a crazy decision and I applied to just retail stores and different things like that. And the first person to call me was Target. Super
Cool.
random. I was like, cool, I'm going to be a cashier at Target. This is going to be great. I don't know what I'm doing. It's going to work out though. And fast forward, basically, I saw last fall, I saw a posting. Well, one day I was at work that Target would pay for your education. And at that time, literally like 2 weeks before, I had already started looking at coding boot camps because one of my friends that I actually went to church with, she went to a coding boot camp, and it started kind of connecting. Like, oh, wait, are those the people that I met like a few years ago?
Yeah.
And I was looking at boot camps, very expensive, fancy boot camps, and all this stuff. But then I saw this posting at Target where, they said they would pay for your education. And I saw a boot camp on there. So
Wow.
so I ended
Very
up
cool.
signing up. Yes. And I actually graduate today. So I'm really
Nice.
excited.
Congrats. Holy
Yay,
crap.
thank you.
That's crazy. Okay. First of all, that's nuts. I never heard of that. That Target would pay for like a coding boot camp. Was the Target
Yeah.
created, or like who, like what boot camp is this, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no problem. It's actually, so they only go with like specific like programs, and you could get a bachelor's and master's degree, different things like that. But
Yeah.
it seems like they partner with like specific people, or specific, universities and stuff. But they did partner up with a trilogy,
Okay.
2U trilogy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And it wasn't like any campus. Like I couldn't go to like any,
Okay.
particular one. I had to go to the one through Minnesota. Like that was one of the ones that, like, one of the universities that they partnered with.
So before you saw that okay, first of all, so you quit your job in you said not optometry. What'd you say again?
Yeah, it and
Okay.
and optical optometry.
Okay.
So
Cool. Cool.
yeah, I was the person that would blow air in your eye, like when you would
Oh, that's
come for
awesome.
your.
So you're like, I'm done with this because you're working too many hours. So regardless, you were like, I just got to get out of this job. And so that's what
Yes.
led you to like, okay, cool, Target. That's good. Which, by the way, like I remember early on in my journey of graduating college, and this was I graduated I think 2011, and my degree was in religious studies, and I'd only worked
Yep.
basically for ministries. And I remember I applied like 60 jobs, and one of them, like the job I really wanted was, oddly enough, to work at Target. And like I
Yeah.
just like and Target rejected me. I was like, what is the deal?
Yeah.
Like I can't get a job, anywhere. But had I known it, at the time, they definitely didn't have any boot camp kind of things like that. So
Yeah.
okay, before you did the boot camp with Target, were you already looking at boot camps, considering like making that kind of like huge leap?
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Okay.
definitely was. And I was trying to look into like, because each boot camp had like a little bit of a different like technology. And then there were these different words like be a web developer, be a software engineer, be a software
Yeah.
developer, and it was just like, wait, what are these things,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So before the boot camp started, had you done like any kind of coding, or was it one of these things where they can start you from scratch?
I did on my own. I did
Okay.
start like I like have a subscription to Udemy, and I kind of like just yeah. So I kind of just like started learning on my own, but before the course even started, they did have like pre-course work. And you would do a little bit of HTML, CSS and JavaScript. But it was very, very like, if you don't get it, it's totally fine. We'll get into that like in the boot
Cool.
camp.
Cool.
So yeah.
And then how long was was it like 6 months part time?
Yes, I did
Okay.
the 6 months
Cool.
part-time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the obviously trilogy or 2U. I don't know what they're called these days. They're everywhere. So there's one around here where I'm at right now too. So yeah, it's probably similar. Okay, so you graduate today,
Yeah.
um, and you were saying kind of your next step might be to continue on with Target because they offer some sort of like apprenticeship type position, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, definitely nothing's for sure.
Yeah.
It's something that my heart is on. That's one of the places that I have like an eye on, my eye on. But I definitely, but yeah, does Target does offer like a program, and it's fairly new, and it's for bootcamp grads. Or basically, or I believe it's specifically bootcamp grads who, take on people who have gone through boot camps, and they kind of go through more extensive training to then become eventually a software engineer. So, yeah,
That's awesome.
so of course, yeah. So
That's so
working for Target and obviously knowing their technologies, like I think it would be so cool, like to be able to work on that. But of course, nothing's for sure. You do definitely have to go through an interviewing process and all that stuff, just like
yeah.
everybody else. So, but yeah, until then, I'm just gonna try to hone in on my skills and
Cool. So you
yeah.
said that was the Minnesota. What's the Colorado thing? Because you said you're thinking about moving to either one.
Yeah, so my husband got into schools both in Colorado and Minnesota.
Ah, very cool.
Yeah, he got into CU Boulder for
Awesome.
aerospace engineering. So that's really why we would go to Colorado. So, and we love Colorado. So,
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That sounds
yeah.
awesome. Okay, very cool. So tell me a little bit about your bootcamp experience. Like what has gone well? What's been difficult? I mean, how's it felt? I guess is the question.
Yeah, oh my gosh. It's been crazy. It's been crazy. It's been really, really awesome. It's been very hard. Like, I think it's like everybody tells you it's hard and it's going to be hard and you're just like, yeah, whatever. But then when you're there and like you face JavaScript for the first time, you're like, what is this? So I'm going to
Yeah.
be honest with you, there were lots of tears shed.
Yeah.
There was lots of like, what in the world am I doing? Can I do
Sounds
this?
right. Sounds right.
Yeah, it was definitely, and although it was a part-time boot camp for me on a personal level, it definitely felt like a full time for me because
Yeah.
I still try to find other resources and try to watch videos to understand what was being taught. So um yeah, but overall it was extremely difficult, but it was really awesome, and I felt like they gave us a lot of resources, whether it was additional, links to different docs,
Yeah.
to videos, to, we have 24-hour help, like things like that. So all of those things like really, really helped. So, but yeah.
What did you build some kind of like final project for the program, or how does that work?
Yeah. So there's like three group projects in the span of,
Cool.
from the time that you're there. And yeah, so we built like a full stack, like actual full stack MERN project that we're presenting today. So
Awesome.
yeah. So yeah, we're excited about that. It's nothing too fancy. It's just like a
Yeah,
web developer like store boot
very
camp
cool.
and stuff like that. But yeah, it was very fun to build.
I mean, it is fancy. I always tell folks we just did so for our online program, we hadn't traditionally done demo days, but we experimented like, well, let's just try it. We did one, I think it was like 2 weeks ago. And one of the things I always tell folks is like, look, you may not think this app is that complicated because a lot of times during the demos, they're like showing you like, and you can click this button and you can click this button. And most of the audience is like, yeah,
Like, okay,
who gives
yeah.
a rip? It's like, do you know what goes into being able to click that button?
So
And
true.
it asks you if you really want to delete this. Do you know how much logic you have to think through to ask the user if they really want to delete this?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
so
to be able to
true.
build something, anything at all, in a short amount of time. Like professional developers rarely have to build end-to-end products in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
So, congrats on finishing up. But
Thank
okay,
you.
let's get to. From what I'm hearing, I'm like, I don't know why Sarah's worried at all. But yeah, what are you worried about? What are the kind of questions, the things you've been thinking through that, yeah, tell
Yeah.
me about that.
Yes. I think, man, I think it's kind of like the first thing that, that comes to mind is like, okay, you've going through this boot camp and all this stuff, and there's deadlines to meet and all this stuff. And now it's like literally starting tomorrow, it's like there's no modules to go through. There's
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
like there's it's just you.
yeah.
Like no one's gonna push you to study more and do all that stuff. And I think like first the first question I have is Like, how can you keep that fire burning, like within you, like as a boot camp grad? Like, do you have
Ooh,
any tips or anything like that?
yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, I always laugh because I remember we used to run our program in person, and we would always, like, after our big demo nights, we used to do these in person. Like, basically we rented out like this like wedding venue and had like an open bar and stuff, which was really fun. But after the day afterwards, we'd always like do breakfast with the cohort. And one of the women, she
Yeah.
came and we're like, so how do you feel? You're all done. She was like, no, 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 no. Yesterday I was a student. Today I'm just unemployed. Like, I was like, I don't know. I'm all open. Yeah,
Yeah.
like there are a few things that we specifically do that I think is applicable to anybody. One of them is you're kind of like taking on two roles when you finish up, right? One of the roles is like a job searcher. Like, that's kind of like your primary role is to look for a job.
Yeah.
Yet you like really can't stop like putting your foot on the gas in terms of coding and building projects. And I always post about this on LinkedIn, and inevitably, like, I think it just happened today. Some old guy, no offense to old people, I'm not an ageist, but like some old person with a lot of degrees comments and like, takes a big poo poo on my post. But the idea is like, hey, if you're building software, like, you are a software engineer, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you're doing all of the hard work of being a software engineer, which is like taking the initiative to like learn new technologies, to build stuff with it. And I don't know, like, Sarah, like, how good your work was or not. But it doesn't really matter because it's a spectrum, right? If you keep going and you keep making progress, it doesn't really matter that much how good your
Mm-hmm.
stuff is now, as long as you're progressing upwardly. Like, it's going
Yeah.
to get better to the point of like someone just cannot help but hire you. And also, like, right now is the hardest part, right? Like, I think I made a
Yeah.
post on LinkedIn recently. I was like, first job, you're like freaking out, anxious, like no one will hire me. I'm just desperate for money. Like, someone do this. But then like 2 years in, you're like you've got it made almost. Like, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous, like how much people will pay software engineers, the flexibility you have, all of that. Like, what's the difference? It's like a little bit of work experience. Yeah, but basically there is not a lot of difference. So I always say, like, look, if you're building projects, you already are a software engineer. You just have to get someone to pay you for it, which feels like a giant leap. But all
Yeah.
the hard work of changing yourself is really more or less behind you. Now, hopefully, you have a flywheel spinning, and as long as you don't stop that flywheel, you'll be okay. Like, I don't know if it's going to be a week, 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months. In our experience with graduates, it's never more than 6 months. Like, that's like a very long
Mhm.
time it takes, as long as you keep doing a few things. So what I always say is, so those two hats, job searcher and then still software engineer. So the simplest way to do this is, for the software engineer piece, is pick a project you want to build. Maybe it's one that you've already built, and just keep going on it, right? So whatever that
Yeah.
looks like for you, one of the things that we walk students through is, and this is for part-time folks, which is good. That's kind of the position you've been in, which is like, hey, whatever that part-time cadence that you had going, just keep it going, right? So
Mhm.
for a lot of folks, it's like maybe that's an hour a day, maybe that's like a day a week, whatever that chunk of 10, 15, 20 hours a week is. I don't know how much you're able to put in, but like, as long as you're consistent with that, that's a good thing. And try and build something real, like something that actually solves a real problem. I
Yeah.
also get a lot of flack for saying this a lot too, because people are like, oh, if I'm going to build something real, then I might as well like raise money and start a business. And it's like, well, no,
No.
like, you can,
Yeah.
you can build something real that just doesn't make money. Like, right. You
Yeah.
don't have to figure out like the product market fit piece, whether anyone actually wants the product or not. It's obviously about you coding something. But what I say during that process is, and this kind of helps with the job search, is learn in public and build in public. So
Mhm.
basically, one idea is keep working on a project in every day. Maybe it's every day for 7 days a week. Every day, I only post on LinkedIn Monday through Friday, and I just batch them all. So do something like that,
Yeah.
where you're just basically documenting your process. And at first, maybe no one cares, maybe no one likes your messages or whatever. But at the very least, in terms of learning in public, this keeps you accountable to yourself and maybe a few other people. Like, maybe it's other people you graduated the school with, and they say, oh,
Yeah.
look, Sarah's like still active. She's still punching out on this project. And that will keep your skills up. But I think the most important piece right now in the job search is keeping your confidence up, right? And it's that whole piece that like
Yeah.
you believing that you're a software engineer. And I get this from, I don't know, hold on.
You're good.
Uh, my wife makes fun of me for liking these kinds of like, he's like, this
Just
is self-help. I'm like, this is not self-help, but it's, I'm holding up the Atomic Habits by James Clear. And
oh my gosh, I'm writing this down.
oh yeah, great book. But one of the things, this is a book all about habits. But one of the things that James Clear talks about is, I've talked about this before, and I'll stop blabbing in a minute, I swear. But
No, you're good.
but basically that whenever you're trying to adopt a new habit, you're basically you're casting votes for a new identity. So he gives an example in the book of like this guy who wants to get into shape, but he's really out of shape. And so what he does is every day he just drives to the gym. And for a long time, which I don't believe this story, by the way, but for a long time, he doesn't even work out. He just goes to the gym and then comes home. And he's doing this so that he could become the type of person who goes to the gym, right? Because, if you don't go to the gym, like you don't have that identity as like a person who goes to the gym. But the more you show up, it's casting that vote. And that vote isn't for anyone else. It's not for your LinkedIn audience. It's not for other companies. It's for you. And so the more that you can just sit down, write some code, struggle with it, good code, bad code, whatever, it's casting that vote for yourself that like you are a software engineer, right?
Yeah.
So then that plays into the other part, which is the job search. So what I always say is the most important piece of the job search is to, I always say, start with like the companies you actually want to work at. Because again, if you have that confidence piece level up, then you can choose where you work, right? I'm not saying you're going to be a software engineer at Google or something like that, but like, if don't settle for crappy jobs that you don't think you'll be respected or whatever at, try and go after places you actually want to work. It'll be genuine. Whenever you show up in the interview, they say, "Why do you want to work here?" You don't have to like make up BS. You can actually explain why you want to work there.
Yeah.
And then the goal here is to make a real connection, make a connection with a real person at all costs. And I think it's hard, I will say, I think for like, just to be, I don't know, whatever this is, but like, I used to say this, but I realized, I think like for like, a 20 something year old, like young white dude whose parents paid for his college and all that, it's easier to say that, like, just go after it, do whatever you have to do, like walk into a place and demand a job. I think it's different. I think it's different for women. Honestly, I think it's a bigger barrier I have to cross over, but like, that's the goal, is to put yourself out there as much as you can. And the main thing that's going to move the needle here is most other people are not, right? Most people apply. I mean, whenever you apply for a junior position, like they get hundreds of applicants and most of them are not actually qualified, just to be honest. Right. So you're probably in the top few who's actually qualified to get that job. But if you just apply, like you won't be noticed because your resume says that you're not qualified,
Yeah.
You need the opportunity to show that you are. So that looks like asking for meetings on LinkedIn, sending individual messages, whatever. So what I always say is like create a daily workflow of like how can you like in 1 hour a day, basically usually what we do in our program is we have like a spreadsheet that we give students to say like, hey, just keep track of everyone we're reaching out to and just hammer them like every other day, send them an email until they email you back and just kind of be like blissfully ignorant of like, oh, just being persistent here, just being super kind. Because what our tendency is, and this is the confidence piece, is like we won't reach out because our assumption is like, oh, they must think I'm terrible. They hate me. Like, I'm not a good developer. I don't have real experience. You just make all these assumptions about the reason why people are not responding to your emails.
Yeah.
And most of the time they're wrong. And I usually go through this scenario in which like I applied for one of my first jobs and I took a leap and I did this. I just started hammering this guy and his response was like, oh, so sorry. I don't know how I missed this. And next thing you know, I'm like, I have a job offer from that company, and if I would have made the assumption like, oh, they don't want to talk to me,
Yeah.
I did. I was fighting that feeling. Then I would never have the opportunity. So anyway, I'm blabbing hardcore. But
You're fine.
those are like my soapbox items for like how do you keep it going? Like those two things, daily workflow, keep
Yeah.
committing to projects, and then just post regularly on LinkedIn. If nothing else, for your own self. The biggest thing here is your own confidence. And if you're confident, which is going to be really hard to be confident consistently, you're going to feel like dog crap so many days of the week. And your husband's going to be very kind to you and encourage you that you're awesome.
Yeah.
I think you'll make it sooner or later. It's inevitable.
Yeah, thank you for that. Oh my gosh, I know you touched a little bit on this too. But I know you mentioned like only applying for or first applying to the jobs that you really want to work at. And it's funny though, that was one of my questions as well, because I've heard that, right? That's like one of the things I hear a lot. But then I also hear like apply for anything and everything. Like you need to get that first job, whichever, once you get that first job,
Yeah.
you're good. So it's like, what, and I'm sure it's like a case by case, like, I
Yeah.
don't know, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that specific part on like
I
applying
mean,
to places?
yeah, it's hard. I'd say like to wade through the nuance of that. Yeah, it's true. Like your first job, like if your resume shows some experience at all, like it's really good, right? Like if you have a year of experience, like that's awesome. Finding your next job will be super easy in comparison. You'll, by the way, like at least in the time that I've been doing this, like you'll never have a problem finding a job again. Like unless the Armageddon comes, or
Yeah.
like we create like software engineer robots or something like that. But it's going to take some really great software engineers to do that. So
Yeah,
uh,
that's true.
yeah, I mean, I think like the main thing here is like that's true, right? The more people you reach out to, or the more irons you put in the fire, obviously increases your chance of like something hitting. But I think oftentimes where people mess this up, at least in my opinion, is the method. They say like apply to every job you can. I wouldn't say apply to every job, because again, like the actual application itself, a cold application, you read those posts on LinkedIn, and I kind of have this soapbox too, that which is like, I applied 300 jobs, I got
Yeah.
4 interviews, and I got like 2 offers. It's like, good Lord, if you're applying for 300 jobs, like you are wasting your time, because there's no way anyone is looking at, maybe like the 4 people who did look at it were just happened to be the 4 who looked at it. So I think, yeah, reach out to a lot of people, but don't apply to a lot of jobs. I think the most important thing is making a connection. And I've done this before in like my past lives, where instead of ever applying for a job, I'll try and reach out to somebody and make a connection, and then I'll let them guide me on like how to get in. And oftentimes, to be honest, like these tech companies, especially, employees are financially motivated to get you hired, because if I work at Target, and I don't know
Mhm.
how Target does this or not, but a lot of companies do this. If I work at Target and my friend Sarah applies and I refer her, whenever Sarah gets hired, I'm going to get a bonus, like a kickback of, and this is
Oh
sometimes they're like
yeah.
$3,000, $5,000 recruiting bonuses for folks. I remember I worked at this company. This was like my last real job, I guess, like years ago, called Spreadfast. And one of my friends, I think they got either a $3,000 or $5,000 like bonus every time. And like he'd gotten like 5 of us who were all friends hired. And we're like,
That's
man,
awesome.
you're taking us to lunch, because
Yeah.
like you you've made like 15, 20 grand off of just like getting us hired. So just don't assume people don't want to help you. You assume that they do, and because in a
Yeah.
lot of cases they actually do, and just don't take their no's as like rejection. So yeah, a lot of irons in the
Yeah.
fire for sure, but each place you apply to is going to take significant energy and effort, right? I think just applying to places and moving on, like that's lazy, and you're going to get lazy
Yeah.
results. You know,
Yeah,
um,
very true. Yeah, thank you for that.
yeah,
I guess kind of aligned, sorry, lots of like job questions.
yeah, please.
I I guess the other thing too is do you think that, and again, this might be like a case by case situation as well. But do you think that it's important for like bootcamp grads to kind of take a step back first and kind of like look at, go back and kind of like, like I know we've mentioned a bit, like honing in on their skills first before even jumping in on the job search?
Um, no, I mean, maybe it depends.
Yeah.
I think it depends on, I think it's hard to tell because not every bootcamp grad's the same, right? And
Hmm.
it's, to be honest with you, some people, and it depends on the boot camp too. And I'm not trying to like dog anybody else or anything like that. I'm just saying like what our experience is.
Good. Yeah.
We have a thing in our program where like every module, which is about every week or so, we have grades, and you can fail like the modules, and you have to retake them, and you have to pass them. So if you're graduating from our program, it means like you're probably ready. I know some boot camps are
Mhm.
different to where, and I'm just saying this because I don't know who's listening or where they've gone before, but some boot camps are like, if you're still there when the clock's up, like you graduated, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it depends on what your background is and in terms of like the bootcamp experience and what you're able to do. Some people may actually not be ready. I think a
Mhm.
lot of people fall into the fallacy though that like they're not ready because they don't feel ready, and you never are really going to feel ready, and you really don't even have the information to know whether you're ready or not necessarily, right? I remember this one guy, Jeff. He's a mentor for us now, but he was a student of mine years ago. He's a senior engineer. I remember he asked us one day, he's like, hey, how do we know that we're any better than these other people applying to jobs? And I was like, it's a good question. You don't know. Like, you don't have that information, you know?
Yeah.
So take that with a grain of salt. But I think the main litmus test here is like, can you build stuff? Because I think
Mhm.
the a trap that I see a lot of, and you probably have already encountered this at this point, but a trap that a lot of bootcamp students fall into is they'll get to, maybe it's like time to build something. And they're like, oh crap, this is hard. I don't know how to build it. They'll go back to like curriculum or tutorials or books, articles, podcast, just information, just trying to absorb information, hoping that like by osmosis, somehow reviewing curriculum, reviewing information will then enable them to like build the thing. And reality is like the process in which you learn to build the thing is just to build the thing, you know?
Yeah.
So if you're building something and you have a goal, maybe get with a mentor, somebody who knows what they're doing to help scope together like what's a good goal or what's a good project to build that's reasonable in your skill set, but still a stretch. Once you get there and you encounter a problem, that's whenever you go and learn something, because in that moment, if you're learning something in order to do something, like in order to build something, like that learning is actually going to happen, right? It's not just knowledge; it's actually a skill that you're learning in that moment, because it enables you to do something, and that skill probably will never go away. Now, an example might be
Mhm.
like, if you're trying to implement authentication in your app and
Mhm.
you're like learning how to use Passport or something like that, just going to read an article on Passport won't help you learn Passport, but
Yeah.
having your own app in which you have to implement Passport to build authentication, you'll learn Passport. Now, maybe you'll forget the name of the methods. You won't have it memorized. So in the future, what you'll have to do is you'll have to go look up the documentation, but it'll take you like 30 seconds to do that and just copy paste the stuff. So you'll know how it works because you've done it before. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say there's probably a lot of that needs to happen for folks, but you can do that
Mhm.
as you go, right? I mean, you don't have to like wait and pause. I think probably that's a detriment to most people, is to wait. It's like keep going and allow like the process to inform you of like what you need to work on, where you're not prepared. But you really can't go wrong if you start moving forward, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Just
Thank
gotta do it.
you. Yeah, I know. I'm definitely those people that are like, I'm gonna take a step back just for 2 seconds. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm grateful. I was just offered a position at my school just like as a TA and like or
Oh, very cool.
tutor.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I'm kind of using that as my like, okay, like it's gonna keep me in the loop of things and
for sure. That's awesome if you can do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, let me see here. Um, sorry, going through my list here.
Hey, great. Thanks. So much
Okay.
easier for me as a host.
So I I guess another question I have is, what advice would you give to someone? And I know it's probably hard, again, case by case, but what advice would you give to someone who's learning to code or going through a boot camp while living in like, let's say a toxic environment, or maybe an environment where like maybe their family isn't supportive of it, or there's just lots of distractions and stuff like that? Like, what would you, I know that's like hard to say, but
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't know that I have like experience with this. So I'd
yeah,
feel maybe like this is one of those moments where I'd be making something up.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess, yeah, unfortunately, fortunately, I think I've been privileged to like, I think myself, I was in an environment where like my wife and I were living on our own, but she was a teacher and I made like no money. So by my standards,
yeah,
she was rich as a teacher. I remember like telling her like, hey, I want to do this boot camp thing. And thinking she'd be like, oh, that's nice. Like, probably not, because it's $10,000 or whatever it was.
yeah,
And her response, like, oh my God, you have to do this, like, and she just got a loan like in
yeah.
her name because I didn't have, any credit.
She's
Or,
awesome.
yeah, I don't know. I would
Yeah,
feel bad like trying to like make up something for someone that's in that position, because yeah, I can't imagine like not having a supportive environment
yeah.
is probably just puts you at a real disadvantage for something like that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, and it's funny. No, you're good. No, yeah, I will say like it's funny that you say that, but I want you to know like on a personal level, this is something that I went through,
Mm,
because I'm able to go through this boot camp and work at Target because
yeah.
my husband and I temporarily moved into my parents' house. But this definitely was kind of the environment that I was in. So, but I will say
Like
your
your parents were
podcast,
not supportive, or
yeah, and a lot of, one, because they didn't really understand what it was, but then
yeah.
also too, I have a brother who went through a boot camp, and he says that software engineers make minimum wage, and I'm wasting my time, and
Oh
there's a
wow.
lot of stuff like that. It's a weird environment, but I
So
will
so
say,
he had like a
yeah,
bad experience
I
then.
think, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's hard.
and that was like, I think it was about like 8 years ago or so. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
it sounds like as long as your husband is supportive, that's, I guess
yeah, that's a
that's
for sure.
it's your
That's
new
for sure.
unit. But I can't imagine. At least your parents were supportive enough to let you live with them. So
Exactly. Yeah. Pros and cons, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm sorry you went through that. Yeah,
No,
I
you're
think
good.
especially hard whenever people have got negative experiences, because especially in the boot camp world, I think it's true. Like there are some, uh, I don't know if the word is scam, but there are some pretty bad boot camps. And then at least it just takes one person, because we've had that too, right? We've had people who have had bad experiences in our school, and it doesn't mean that like
Mhm.
our school is bad. It means it probably wasn't a good fit for them. Like that this was
Yeah.
not like a good choice on their part. And I think I'll caveat that with saying like, I think anybody can learn to do. I don't think you have to have a certain kind of brain, IQ, intelligence, any of that kind of stuff. Anyone can become a software engineer, but it's like,
Mhm.
who will? Like, you know what I mean? Like a lot of folks come through boot camps thinking that just by being there or going through the motions that they're going to be guaranteed a job. And like, as you know, like there's no magic pill. Like the
Yeah.
only way through it is the hard way, right? Like
Yeah.
you only learn how to code by like actually learning it. Like no one gives you a certificate. I mean, your certificate is worthless, right? Like no one cares about like, and like it's great to celebrate and be proud of what you accomplished. But in terms of getting you a
Right.
job, like no one's going to give you a job because you're graduating today. They're going to give you a
Yeah.
job because you can build software.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that was your brother's experience or not, but hopefully you can prove to
Yeah.
him that yours is different and that
Yeah.
you should reconsider.
Yeah. Definitely. And I know you said you didn't know like what to say exactly, but I will say your podcast definitely helped me a lot. And I think especially trying to get to the right mindset. So I do want you to know that like the whole
I appreciate
mindset
that.
part definitely helped.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
always say, I mean, to be honest with you, it's with a grain of salt, right? I had a very specific, privileged experience myself, and I think a lot of people that are coming through our program have something serious. I mean, something similar. So, yeah, I can't imagine having to go through some of what other people have gone through. Even our students, I think, have had a much harder situation than I have, and they tap into something else that
Yeah.
gets them through, which is really admirable.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so I do want, and I think you might have answered this already, but and I mentioned this before about how while I was researching different boot camps, I came across different titles, right?
Yeah,
Yes. What, like, I mean, I guess you don't really have to answer like what does it mean to be one or the other, but like what, like realistically, like what limits will I have like as a bootcamp grad? Like if I, let's say, name myself as a full stack web developer versus a software engineer, like
no one knows. Literally, no one knows. Everyone's making it up. Like the boot camps that advertise that become a full stack web developer versus the one that said become a web developer versus programmer versus software engineer probably did some kind of marketing research, you know? So
Yeah.
I use software engineer just as like the base term because, you know, that wasn't too long ago that whenever you heard the word web developer, you thought of someone who did HTML and CSS, right? That used to be an actual position. Or web designer was like a thing
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah.
And web designer was someone who could like design and build a website. Now, like as you know, take a weekend course on HTML and CSS,
Yeah.
and you too can learn these skills, right? So
Yeah.
when we say web developer, what we mean is basically software engineer for the web, which looks like complex JavaScript. You know, you're building React apps, you're working with data, and that is every bit as difficult as, you know, being a back-end engineer. So I don't know. I'm under the impression personally that like call yourself whatever you want, right? And if you apply for a job that says we're looking for a full stack web developer, at the top of your resume, put full stack web developer. If you're applying for a job that says front end engineer, put front end engineer at the top because you're all of those things, you know. As far as limitation goes, I don't think there really are limitations, right? Because if you've gone through this process of learning these, I mean, because the reality is like software technology changes very quickly, right?
Yeah.
But the principles of building good software change much more slowly. So what I always say to our students is like, hey, we're going to teach you JavaScript and you're going to be able to build full stack JavaScript apps. But like there is nothing, and in fact, for a long time, we used to track this. About half of our students would graduate and get jobs doing something completely different. I mean, in terms of like software engineering, they would go on, they'd learn Java or C++ or, you know, .NET or something like that. And that's because they learned like the fundamentals of building software. The language, the stack, etc., didn't really even matter so much because it was just like the tool they used, you know? So
Yeah.
I think software engineer is the most generic term, but depending on the job you're applying for, like, you know, call yourself whatever.
Okay, sounds good. Um, okay, another question I have is, I've heard of some people, and it's not super common, but I know I have heard of some people attending multiple boot camps. Um, and it could be because like they felt like they weren't prepared or anything like that. Um, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that somebody should do that if they don't feel prepared?
Um, I don't know. And the thing is, I've encountered this a lot before, where people reach out
Yeah.
to me saying like they graduated from X and X boot camp,
Hmm.
but they feel like they're screwed and they need to do something else, you know? And I'd say there's a couple things, again, case by case, but the things that I see are some people do boot camps that, I mean, really like you came in, you didn't have to know anything before it started. They taught you very little. It might have been a very short course. They called it a boot camp, but really, if you look at it, the end goal wasn't that you would be job ready by the end of it, right? So
Yeah.
those folks definitely they like got prepared, right? We do a course called Dev 30, and in 30 days you learn JavaScript, yada yada yada, and like in no way would anyone be near ready for a software engineering job after finishing that. But if I called it a
Yeah.
boot camp, like maybe folks would feel like they should be, you know? So I think there's a lot of courses like that where people take some kind of course, they call it a boot camp and they get done and like, oh yeah, reality is like, you're not prepared. or they got misled. And, oftentimes I'd say that the hardest part about becoming a software engineer is kind of like learning your first language.
Yeah.
And really you can do that before a boot camp starts, because you probably felt it at some point. There's like sort of like this switch that flips in your brain from learning your first language, where it's like before, like, I don't know where any of this is. Then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, I get this,
Yeah.
If you can have that before your boot camp starts, then the boot camp will actually be a lot more effective, like in terms of what you learn. Unfortunately, a lot of times people have that, like at the end of the boot camp, they're like, oh gosh, like I got to do this again. Like that's what this all means,
Yeah.
So I think for folks that are in that situation, you can either chalk it up to sunk costs and do another boot camp. But I think probably what's better is to figure out if you can start to get into the first thing we talked about, which was like just start building, right?
Yeah.
So the kind of like the test for this, I would say, is like, are you able to build something? Like if you're not, you either need to like work on learning the skills to build something.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, can you do that on your own or can you not? If you cannot do that on your own, then you probably need to like do another program or something like that. But, and I'd ask why, right? Like why you can't do that on your own. And if it has anything to do with like motivation or time management or any of that kind of stuff, like boot camp's not going to solve that, right? That's all. I mean, even in this podcast, listen to episode 1. I think what we talked about is like the number one reason people fail coding boot camps is because of who they are. Like not like their identity, but like, in terms of like their own like ability to like stick with stuff or produce or be productive. And it's maybe not even a fault of that person. Like they're not like terrible people for like not being able to do that, but it's like, well, you may just not be in that season yet of your life. I mean, I could tell you when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, I would have not been ready for a boot camp. When I was 25, when I was 25, like I was finally kind of there, So yeah, I don't think people have to go to boot camp, because I think a lot of times people fall in that trap of like, oh, I'm never ready. So there's definitely a difference between those who are not prepared and those who just don't have confidence. And the difference is like, can you build something? And if you can, then you just need to like die to that feeling.
Yeah. All right. I believe. Okay. So another question I have for you. I think this might be my second to last one for you. What would you say is the best way to prepare yourself maybe for like interviews and like specifically like whiteboarding interviews, just technical interviews in general? Again, this might be hard because I know every company is different, but yeah.
I'd say like you really want to practice your problem solving skills, and that's like a generic answer. But what I mean by that is like Code Wars is one website, or Leak Code, basically because there's a difference between like building something and solving a problem, right? Like when you're building something, oftentimes, and this is pretty common for bootcamp grads, is like your experience is thinking through the lens of the product. Like, what do I want to build? And basically you're just slapping together whatever you can to make it look cool.
Yeah.
That's often what happens in boot camps. And the thing about whiteboard interviews is they're like, it's the opposite, right? It's about solving the problem. And for everybody who, would interview folks would tell you this, that like they're much more concerned with your thought process. So there's a lot of resources online for like preparing for technical interviews, but the most common probably piece of advice you'd get is like learn how to think out loud, to start talking through the problem. So that means that you're gonna have to be really intimate with your own problem solving process. Like everyone solves problems a little bit differently, but being able to like clarify the question they're asking, talking through like what your thought process is, giving them something, never saying I don't know, but being honest with like limitations of what you don't know. But the more like you do solve problems like on your own like this, the better you'll get at that, right? And the more you'll be forced to come up with your own process. So I think doing those kind of like brain teaser type things where, like our admissions code challenge has these for our program, where it's like, given an array of items, find the most frequent item in the array, right? So it's like, okay, cool. There's like about 5 ways to do this. Doesn't matter which way you're going for, just be able to break down that problem into like its smallest steps and explain it. And the few times that I've actually, because I'm not like the best person to talk to necessarily about this, because I haven't had a lot of technical interviews in my life, but the few times I've done this, I don't know that I've ever actually solved the problem completely. But that hasn't really mattered to the interviewer. It's more like, can I think through it? So again, coming back to that confidence piece, like being able to be calm, collected, honest with where you're at, because you're not going to be able to fool them into thinking that you are able to do something else. But basically what we want to do that when that moment is have the opportunity to the best of your ability, show them everything you do know, right? Without hiding the fact that there's things you don't know. They know that they're somewhat taking a chance on you. Like the reason why they're going to pay you $70,000 instead of $120,000 is because you know less. You know? And at the end of the year, like you won't. So they know that you're not like an expert. They just want to know that you can get through stuff, you know?
Yeah. Very true. Thank you.
I think.
Okay, so I think the last question I have for you is in your experiences, or in your experience, I'm sorry, which languages do you find to be like the most used or asked for in the industry? I know that like JavaScript is very, popular and stuff like that. But what would you recommend? Like these should be at least like the top 2 languages that maybe like junior web devs should learn.
Yeah, I think knowing one really well is what you should do. Like you don't need to know. I mean, if you know one very well, then like you should be able to learn the second one easily, right? It's because they're all the same, right? I mean, they're not all the same. but it's like arrays. Okay, cool. We've all got arrays. Functions. Cool. We all got functions. I do think like at some point, I think to get your first job, you don't need to learn more than one language. I think learning your second language will help you actually learn more about your first one though, because like I remember early on for me, I was like, what does strictly typed versus loosely typed mean? Like I didn't know until I started realizing there's other languages that have differences, So if you're, even like learning, for example, if you've learned JavaScript, like looking into TypeScript, we've had like our last group of students who graduated. One of the guys, he took it on himself to like learn TypeScript for his final project. And it was funny because even at the demo, like his project was good. I don't want to like, say, Nathan, shout out Nathan, your project was really good, but he went in like and showed the code because his focus of the project was to show like, hey, I learned this other, in some ways another language. So yeah, the most important thing is being able to show the interviewer that like you can pick up new technologies fast. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't think you need to learn more than one at first. Per se.
Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
The only caveat I'd add is like, if you can learn what the difference between a functional language is and an object-oriented language, that's super helpful because like there's, most languages that I think a lot of companies would have you build in, and I shouldn't say that, are object-oriented like Python or Ruby. And JavaScript kind of like does both, but then like there's like Haskell and Clojure and Scala, which are all functional languages. And if you can like understand the nuanced differences of those, like at least a little bit, it'll help you have a better context for like what's out there. So I would definitely before an interview, like go study functional versus object oriented and just know like a little bit about like the structure of other languages besides the one, without having to like necessarily go in and like, take a month to learn it and build something in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, those are all the questions I had for you right now. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that.
Thank you. You've made this very easy. I appreciate the prepared questions. Yeah, Sarah, I'm very excited for you. I hope it goes well. I hope Target's like, yes, we have got to lock Sarah in, get her this apprentice program and get her working here. But if not, if you're listening to this and you want someone that's awesome to work for you, can I put like your LinkedIn in the show notes or something like that?
Yeah, please. Okay. That would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't promise because we're all, I mean, I think everyone listening to this podcast is all in the same spot.
Yeah, I know. but just remember me.
Yeah, absolutely. And for real, feel free to reach out in the future if something else comes along, or if there's any more, if you need help reviewing anything. Yeah, it's been good to talk to you. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much.
All right, see ya.
Okay.
All right, that does it for this episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you want to learn more about my code school, Parsity, you can find us online at parsity.io. It's parsity.io. If you want to join us for the next session of Dev 30, this is 30 days to work on your skills, your habits, your network, and your mindset together. Go to dev30.xyz. Again, we're doing this together as a cohort. So join the over 400 people who have signed up for this previously. This is going to be our third time doing this. We're really excited. It starts on July 25th. And do not forget to visit Peter's YouTube channel. Peter is the other host of this podcast. As you'll hear, a lot of his episodes are about his transition from being a software engineer to doing this, what do you call it? Indie hacker, self-employed, contract life. And his YouTube channel is really awesome for thinking about another way that you could envision your career as a software engineer. Okay, we'll see you back here next week.